Hi everybody, this is Ruth Royal from Youth Pledge for Employers, and I'm really pleased to be here today with Charlotte Notley, who's Director at Taylor Investigations. Hi Charlotte, lovely to see you.
Hello, and you?
So tell us a bit about Taylor Investigations and what you do.
So we are a private investigation company.
That just sounds so exciting.
Yeah, it's not as exciting as what the TV and films often make out, but yeah, it's not too bad. We cover a range of investigation services. So everything from process serving, which is the serving of court documents,
right?
Tracing people. So normally it's a case of somebody would come to us because they need to find and locate. It might be a debtor, for example, so somebody owes money. It could be a beneficiary, so somebody who's passed away and the individual is entitled to money from the estate. Right. So sometimes it is for nice reasons.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time it is debt related. We do work on adoption cases and things like that as well. There's any tracing of family and parents and things. So that's the person tracing. Then we do asset tracing. So we identify an individual's assets. So for example, if somebody owes you money and you want to go through the process of recovering that money, you want to take them to court to say, yes, they owe me money and I want to get my money back. We always recommend to clients that they come to us and we can say, look, this is the sort of assets that they have. You know, do they have their own house? Are they working? Is it viable for you to be able to recover your money? Because as we know, unfortunately, somebody may owe you money. It doesn't mean that they've got it. So before that client has to go through the process of racking up more legal fees, they come to us and we double check beforehand. We work with a lot with the insolvency sector, so companies who are going into liquidation, tracing directors, tracing assets of directors. We also do digital forensics, so we forensically analyse laptops, phones, computers, servers.
That just sounds so exciting, digital forensics.
What else do we do? So we do family tree research as well. So we do people's family trees, and that can be from, you know, a client who wants to get their mum's, you know, 70th birthday present or a Christmas present, for example, wants their family tree to be done for them, find out who their ancestors are, a bit more about their history. Or it can be a solicitor comes to us and says, fortunately, somebody's passed away. We need to identify who these beneficiaries are. We need to know who their relatives are. So we do that as well. We do employment investigations and surveillance, so staff who might be on long-term sick, potential theft of intellectual property from businesses, member of staff who's leaving and there might be a breach of contract issue. So we do surveillance primarily for employment investigations, any cohabitation investigations for sort of the family law sector. Just trying to think what else we do. Background investigations, so looking into an individual's background, who they are, what they're about, are they who they say they are. So yeah, that's kind of the broad spectrum, I suppose, of what we do. It's a lot, I know.
That is a lot, and though it's all related, it's quite vast, isn't it? And I just sort of wonder, obviously it'd be interested to explore, first of all, probably you maybe need a baseline set of skills in terms of like personal qualities, I'd have thought. What do you think those are, first of all, Charlotte?
So, I mean, I started the business when I left the police force. So I was in the police and then I left and set up the business. So I sort of transitioned with my skills, my investigative skills from the police into, or from the criminal side into civil. You know, everything we deal with is all civil law. But we've also got staff who work for us who haven't got any policing experience, but we've got a lot of our surveillance operatives have got military or policing experience. But like I say, I suppose one of our member of staff, Jamie, started for us 2.5 years ago. He was sort of 22, I think, when he came. And he doesn't have that experience, but he's got a natural inquisitive mind about him, I suppose. He did a degree in psychology as well. So he's really interested in understanding the reasons why people do what they do. So yeah, I mean, you've got to have that sort of skill set. I would say a really good understanding of the law is quite.
I was going to say, it seems to me in terms of hard skills that you probably need quite good legal knowledge.
Yeah, you do. I mean, I'm not to say you need to have a full law degree and you need to work as a solicitor or anything like that, but it's just to have that understanding. So for me, a lot of it, there is that line of what we deal with civil law, but obviously I need to be aware, and I need to make sure my staff are aware of what the criminal laws are out there. When we're doing surveillance on somebody, we need to ensure that it's lawful and it's ethical, and we're not breaching or breaking any laws in doing so.
Yeah.
Again, it's understanding and knowing that. So all of our investigators are qualified to it's a level 3, which is private investigation module, and it's the NVQ qualification level 3, and that just gives us an understanding a lot around the legislation. So it's legislation based. So,
and is that something that people come to you with, or that they undertake once they're employed by you?
They normally undertake it once they're employed by us. So the private investigation industry is unregulated. There is no licensing or anything that's currently in place. The Home Office have said many times they want to work towards that. There are things in the process in the pipelines at the moment where they're looking at code of conduct with the ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office.
Yeah.
Whereby we would then get audited every year to make sure that everything we're doing is GDPR compliant.
Yeah.
It's GDPR compliant, 9 times out of 10 it's going to be everything else compliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
GDPR is sort of the underpinning of that. So yeah, there are things that are sort of in the pipeline in terms of regulation to make sure that the industry is lawful and it is doing things properly and correctly and ethically as well. So, but we would make sure that, like I say, that the level 3 is something that our staff do undertake, so that they have that legislative understanding.
It seems to me as well that, sort of from the outside looking in, that you probably need to have a certain amount of, I don't know, it sounds a bit cheesy really, but probably about of courage. I mean, I'd be rubbish surveilling somebody. One, I would not blend in, and I'd be really nervous in case they spoke to me. But actually, so people must have to be able to also think on their feet, and I guess, do they also have to be able to manage conflict?
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, when we're serving court papers, for example, we serve court papers for such a different variety of reasons. It can be debt related, it can be there's been a domestic dispute, and there's been violence in terms of domestic violence. There can be child related matters, and it can be like emergency applications for children whereby it's the child is going to mum or dad or grandparents, or it's been taken out, that child has been taken away from a situation. So you've got to be able to have resilience to be able to deal and manage with some of those situations.
Yeah.
You do have to have quite thick skin. You do.
Yeah.
You have to be able to, I think, sort of compartmentalize as well. When we deal with these jobs, and we deal with specific individuals who might be quite difficult, to know that we are unfortunately the messenger. We are the person that we deal with a lot of the brunt of it. So it's not our fault, but it is part of the job. You do have to have that resilience to be able to always remain calm, and as well always remain professional. I think it's quite easy that we might be going to serve somebody some court papers, and we've sat and read through a statement, for example, so we know what that individual has done. It can be quite easy to make an assessment or make a judgment towards that person, but we are really, really careful that everybody we come across, we treat them with respect, and we're always professional. It's not for us to make a judgment, and that means that we can often deal with situations easier because we're not on anybody's side. So that really sort of open-minded, unbiased, I've got this job to do and this is what I'm doing. That is so interesting. And what about the sort of the digital forensics? That sounds very exciting. Does that do people who do that tend to have a different skill set from the people that perhaps serve papers, or do people do a mix of everything? So our forensic analysis have been doing it for a lot of years, and they have the relevant qualifications. Again, they are all typically ex-police, because that's where you can get the training, and that's where you would carry out the work when you are in the police. There's only really sort of private sector or the police that you would do those type of investigations, and digital forensics particularly in. So you can, there are courses available online where you can go and qualify yourself and get the relevant training. for digital forensics. However, digital forensics comes twofold, because 9 times out of 10 you need to be able to present evidence in court.
Right.
So to be able to do that, you need to have an understanding again of the court process. So having worked in the police and doing digital forensics in the police, that would always be your best route into it, to be able to have the experience of giving evidence in court, so that if you were to do it private, you can then put yourself forward as an expert witness, and then you can provide evidence in court as well on cases.
Wow. Gosh, that is fascinating. I don't think I even realised that there were courses that you could do around digital forensics.
Yeah.
That's absolutely incredible. That's so interesting. What all of these things that happen, you're director of the company.
Yeah.
What made you think that's what I'm going to do?
Got no idea. I've got no idea.
Seemed like a good idea at the time.
It did. I think the thing is, when I was going through school, particularly around my GCSEs, I always wanted to be a teacher, and that's what I was going to do, and I was going to be a teacher. And I went into my A levels not really knowing how to even become a teacher, but because I wouldn't say it was a burning desire, it was just I wouldn't mind doing that. I didn't really know what to do as my A level, so I didn't really sort of understand or know a path to teaching. I just knew that it was do my GCSEs, do A levels, go to university. That was it.
Yeah.
So started my A levels, and for my A levels, I did psychology, sociology, health and social care as an AS, and then I did graphics as well as an A level.
Right.
So it was quite mixed.
Yeah.
And psychology and sociology, I thought, well, that's quite interesting, because I am, I am naturally inquisitive and curious, I suppose, about people and what they do, why they do things. Graphics was because I loved graphics,
right,
having that sort of bit of a design element, loved doing that. And health and social care I did as an AS because I couldn't really decide if I wanted to do it or not. So I thought, well, I'll do it for a year and I'll see what happens. But it was through my A levels. We were doing sociology, and there's a module in there where you do crime and deviance.
Right.
And I was like, now this is what I'm into. This is what I want to do. And it was one of the only lessons that I religiously turned up to, I'll be honest. I was there and I loved it. And my sociology teacher also had done a degree in criminology.
Wow.
So I was talking to him and he said about it, and I was like, wow, this seems really interesting. And it was the first thing that I thought, I'm going to go off and find out how I can do that. So I went away, I started researching it. And then it obviously became quite apparent, the options for universities, right, I can do a degree in criminology. And then it was, well, what are you going to do with that? Obviously, the parents, well, what are you going to do with criminology? What even is that? So I said, well, there's so many different options that you can do with criminology. You can go into youth offending, you can go into rehabilitation, you can go into the police, you can even go into military police. There's so many different options. And I said, no, I'm going to do this at university. So I did. So I chose Sheffield Hallam University to go to because they were also linked with universities across the world, and I knew I wanted to go and study abroad or do something outside of the UK. So I went to Sheffield University, and then in my second year, so in the end of year one, I applied to study abroad for a semester, which was 6 months, and I got accepted into Australia. So at the age of 19, I packed my bags. I went and studied in Australia for 6 months, which I loved, absolutely loved it. Found out I had lots of family out there. So my gosh. Yeah, my dad's side of the family Greek, so we had a big Greek family out there. So they sort of took me in and looked after me for the whole 6 months.
Oh, how amazing.
I studied out there, which was incredible. Their level of teaching was just unbelievable. I did a lot of traveling as well. So I was studying in Brisbane, so I travelled all sort of down the East Coast, did Sydney, Melbourne, Byron Bay, a few places in between. Whilst working as well, so I had a job out there.
Gosh.
Yeah, it was busy. It was a busy time. And then I came back, and my policing and crime tutor at university said to me, do you want to join the police because you get accredited for it towards your degree? Now, the 6 months that I did in Australia, I had been awarded a first, which was in university terms, the highest sort of grade you can get. And they said, you get accredited for it if you want to join the police, which means you don't have to do any exams, but you still do your final dissertation. So at the time, I just turned 20, and I thought, yeah, why not? Why not? I've never been good at exams. So I thought if it means not doing exams, but I can apply some practical element to it, I'll do that. And a few weeks previous, I'd been on a student night out, as you do, and there was an incident that I'd witnessed, and the police came the following day to take a witness statement from me. And I was able to recall everything quite well. And at that time, the police said to me then, have you ever thought about joining the police? You seem to have a good recall memory. So I sort of said, no, not at all. You know, nobody in my family has ever been in the police. You know, not many people in my family had been to university. I was probably sort of one of five. It just seemed to be the path that I was led down. And so, yeah, I joined the police. I did my dissertation in mentally ill offenders in prison. Joined the police, and then when I graduated, it was the same time when I passed out from my police training, and then I just stayed in the police. I stayed in the police in Sheffield, and then for me, I wanted to come back home, which was Norfolk. So I applied for a transfer to Cambridge because they were the only one taking transfers at the time. There was a lot of other people also transferring to Cambridge because of budget cuts with other forces that they were commuting to. And I had quite a bit of time out, and I said, you know, I've got all this time out, I've got itchy feet, I feel like I want to do something different. I was 26, so I was, you know, I was young enough. I felt that at the time when I was in the police, I loved everything about the police, but when you sort of come out of it, you sort of think, oh, hang on a minute, there is a whole world out there. And then I just started looking into private investigation simply because a friend of a friend's mum knew a process server locally. And somebody mentioned it in conversation. I was like, oh, what's that? So I started looking into it. And then I was like, there's a whole world of business out here in terms of private investigation. So I thought, I'm going to do that. So I set the business up.
Oh, wow.
And that was it. So I had, I think, £150 in my bank. I had a laptop and a sofa, and I managed to get a website done for £100 from somebody who was just setting up a website business. I spent 30 quid on having a logo done and £20 on some business cards, and that was it. And then I just sort of went with it.
That's phenomenal. That is just such an incredible achievement. What I really love about that, Charlotte, is that it seems to me like all the way through, you have followed your curiosity and your interest, and actually you've let yourself be, you know, you've let yourself kind of go with what you're interested in. Like you found out about something, thought, actually I could do a bit more with that, and you've just gone for it. I just think that's so amazing. And I also like from the outside looking in, that you've just, the opportunities that have come up for you, you've just taken them.
I definitely live my life by that. I think that if you're presented with any sort of an opportunity, don't think about it, just do it, because you don't know where that's going to lead. You might hate it, well, that's fine, but it's a learned experience, and you know that you won't ever do that again. So, but you also might absolutely love it, and it leads on to so many other things. You know, I think it's easy for, you know, particularly young people nowadays, it's right, you need to go to school, you need to do your A-levels, you need to go to university, and then you need to get a good job, and then you're going to stay in that good job for 30, 40 years, and then you're going to make sure you're getting a really good pension, and everything will be fine. And I think now there's so many more options out there. You can literally do whatever you want to do. And I just say to everybody I speak to, whatever opportunity comes up, say yes. That's my motto. It's even now in the business, if somebody phones and they say, can you do this? The answer is always yes, and I'll work out how to do it after.
Oh, I think that's absolutely brilliant. And usually we sort of end by asking people what piece of advice they would go back and give their younger self. Do you think that for you it would be around that, around taking opportunities, or what do you think that would be if you were talking to young Charlotte today?
I think probably just have more belief in that things do always work out in the end, you know. And don't get me wrong, when I started the business, it was tough, you know, and I could not even told you, I had no idea what corporation tax was. I had no idea about PAYE and dividends and, you know, national insurance, that as an employer as well, taking staff on as an employer, I'm responsible for making sure their pay at PAYE and their pensions. And, you know, you're not taught that. And it's all those things that you have to learn quite quickly on a really, really sharp learning curve. But ultimately, it's have the belief, because you can find out a way. There's always people that you can ask. So I would always say ask for help and just believe in anything that you're going to do. So
that's a brilliant message. Thank you so much for your time today, Charlotte.
No worries.